Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns and Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're going to be talking about the spell Teleportation Circle. All right, I'm having trouble differentiating this between like dimension door or even transport via plants, except there's no plants necessarily involved. So I guess is the big difference the permanence or what?
I think the big difference of Teleportation Circle and like the Word of Recalls, the transport via plans, the teleports, is Teleportation Circle is designed fundamentally to be like a network of circles. This is supposed to be the kind of like address book you get as your wizard, that you in your spell book you're writing down like these are the different sigils to the different environments that we want to teleport to. And this is kind of a means of fast traveling.
All right, before we get into it, what does it do?
Great. When you cast a spell, you get a 10-foot circle. You inscribe it on the ground with ink. A shimmering portal opens in the circle that you drew and remains open until the end of your next turn. Any creature that enters the portal instantly appears on 5 feet of the destination. Many major temples and other important places have these already. Each circle has a unique sigil, a string of runes attached to them. Whenever you gain the ability to cast the spell, you learn the sequence for 2 destinations in the material plane that your DM picks. Don't love that, but whatever. And then you can learn additional sigils during your adventures that let you go to new places, basically, after a minute of studying. So you can cast the spell, make a brief portal. People can go through the portal and they appear at the other location. That's the gist of it, right? You create a permanent circle by doing this every day for a year. So if you are taking some downtime, you can sit down and be like,
you don't do it. Other people
you pay
have done
a wizard
this in the
to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see though. This feels all like a video game mechanic.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. This is starting with like Dragon Warrior. I used to play on the NES.
Way back in the day.
Yeah.
Teleportation Circle more than anything else feels like a Skyrim fast travel system to me. This is a spell again.
Person.
Listen, I haven't played that much Skyrim. I'm just trying to make references that others would get. Although I guess our demographic might be people are your age, but still, it lands to me as this awkward kind of probably useful mechanic, but it asks the DM to kind of create a bunch of retroactive teleportation circles whenever this happens, right? So I envision a lot of games will get to 9th level and the DM will have never read Teleportation Circle because they're a new DM or because they've only run a couple campaigns, and they'll have never thought about it. And then you'll get to 9th level and your wizard will be like, great, I learned Teleportation Circle. Where can I go, DM? And the DM goes, what? I don't know what happens now? And then he goes and he reads the Teleportation Circle and he has to figure out, okay, there was one in that town that you went through that I don't remember putting there, and neither do you, but it's there now, and you learn that sigil, and you also learn this other place that you can now teleport to. The other place is probably the next adventure he wants you to go on, but the first place is just like, okay, great, this is Word of Recall back to that one town. Oftentimes this is going to be you can never use it in comics, got a minute cast time. This is something you always have to we're using this only to fast travel. But in that instance, this is more or less fast travel / adventure hook the spell. And that's fine.
What about all right, so using it as a player is there? I mean, I feel like it's kind of a DM tool.
Yeah, more than anything else.
But I guess as a player, especially if you and your dungeon master are in agreement that he wants you to have this spell, then to get around, then sure. I guess you're gonna take it.
But this fits into that category of spell for me, where I'm like, if you're casting this to get to a location, either you've already gotten to where you wanted to be and are going backwards, in which case I think oftentimes there are just narrative tools that handle that problem, or you're skipping out on a large adventure, or you're skipping out on the journey of getting there, or whatever adventure may be in between. And in some games that's perfectly fine. In other games, that is a missed adventure that people would have enjoyed having. And at other tables yet, it's sort of you wouldn't have had that adventure anyway. If the game is basically saying you're competent adventurers, you don't need to be worried about bandits on the road anymore at 9th level. You can just say you got there. We can have some narrative. Oh, these are the fights and journeys you went on. You players can tell cool stories about what happened. And then you get to the actual adventure and you start playing the actual game. In which case, Teleportation Circle, it circumnavigates that. It circumnavigates the travel. You have to wonder how much does the instantaneous part matter. And the answer is kind of, for like time sensitive events and stuff that don't happen all that often per game. I don't know. This to me lands as it's only ever used as fast travel. There's no other real way to make it.
I'm just trying to think of like it, like, you know, if the DM wants me to fast travel, I don't want to waste a spell slot on that.
Yeah.
You know,
You're probably not having to. You're probably doing this like in between long rests, especially if you're going to like a known temple or something.
Yeah.
Unless like that known temple is abandoned or whatever, and the teleportation circle is just still up. This probably isn't costing you a spell slot. You're probably going back, long resting, and then starting an adventure. But I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of interesting ways to use it outside of just going from place to place, but that's what it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, this I mean, nothing you're casting in combat, or even if you are, it's just because that combat is going really badly and you've wasted 10 turns doing this.
I think that's so. I would say I think there's a neat encounter to be had where you have to protect the wizard for 10 rounds as he casts teleportation circle. I think you not being the one casting it, but you have the NPC wizard making a teleportation circle, and your whole objective is to survive an endless onslaught of baddies for a minute. That's fun. That's a cool, interesting mechanic. But again, this shouldn't be a spell, in my opinion. I'm pretty sure this should just be a DM tool that is in the DMG. That's you give someone a tool or a tablet of teleportation circle. You give them a book of teleportation circle or whatever, and it gives them this, and it lets them attach to other ones, stuff like that. And then it's exclusively up to the DM as to whether this is something they want to include in their game or not. So you don't have those weird moments of you get to 9th level and the player is like, "Where is this teleportation circles that we've been missing out this whole time, DM? I can't believe we haven't noticed any of these very clear, obvious teleportation circles that are supposed to be at every city we've ever been in." And it's just like, yeah, it lets the DM decide if they want to engage with it versus the players saying,
well, they might not be out in the courtyard or something. You know, there might be like a closed hall with the teleporter. You got to guard that. You don't want just anybody willy-nilly knowing the Wi-Fi code or whatever.
Sure. But this is more so like people aren't aware the Wi-Fi code exists, right?
Yeah.
This is a
also well, and you might not be unless you know, unless you're privy to, you know, there's just a bunch of like really powerful looking wizards always coming out of this room.
Sure,
never saw anybody go in there.
All retroactive, right? You have to be like, oh yeah, there were very powerful wizards coming out of that room that you just never noticed, right? Or more realistically, what will happen is they'll open up 2 new locations, places you haven't been before, or something like that, or you've been dealing with magic. Like, it's not a particularly huge deal. I think it's a little bit of a nuisance. And I think it's got that little bit of a kind of moment whenever it pops up. And what it's giving you, I don't think it's worth that small little hiccup that you have to go over. I firmly believe this should have been either in the Dungeons Master Guide as an item or in a supplemental book about teleporting plane or garbage nonsense, because that's where I think it belongs. I think that there will be games that want to play in the fast travel-y, not very high magic, very high whimsy, teleporting all over the place, dealing with a bunch of dynamic environments. Every week is a different crazy extra-planar adventure. That's where I think Teleportation Circle actually goes great, because it's a really easy way to go back and forth to a bunch of different places. You can say, you're where you want to be whenever you want to be. You have a little catalog of all the places you can go. Neat. In an average high, like not even high fantasy, but just like fantasy adventuring setting, this can be a big hiccup, a big burden, a big like, oh wait, if teleportation circles exist, then shouldn't there just be high arcanists everywhere all the time? It's not that hard to set up one. So you'd think that there'd be like networks of these things all over the place. And I guess now you have to build that into the world somehow, or just actively ignore it. And I don't know. It leaves a sour taste in my mouth.
All right. Well, you got a rating?
I think this is a 2 out of 5. I think as a DM tool, this is a perfectly serviceable 3 out of 5. This is something that's great to have that probably isn't that important whenever you can just have narrative exposition. But it existing can allow for some neat adventures, spontaneous. You find a weird, clever runes as a player spell. I would go as far as saying this is probably a 2. This is something that's like, okay, it gets you back where you want to go, but there aren't really any other clever uses for it unless you can like figure out what the teleportation circles in the enemy base is, assume it's not going to be guarded, and then use this as an entry point or something. But that's so much like even transport via plants is less far-fetched than that. That at least you're talking about moving through plants. This is talking about moving through fixed locations that you know are entryways. I don't know. I'm not seeing it. I think this is mediocre at best. This is a way to get back from an adventure.
I'm going to agree with you about 2 out of 5 for players, but I'm going to give it a 4 for DMs. I think if you're the DM that wants this as a world building tool, then it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Sure.
But yeah, but not everybody's going to. I don't think I would want to play in a world like that. That's makes things too easy to get around. I want a little challenge. I want to
I don't.
slog through
So
the desert or whatever.
I think there are definite games where the survival element is fun and the figuring out how you're going to make it is an interesting part of gameplay. I think once you get to the upper tiers in D&D, that's no longer the case. I think it's create food and water, and a lot of the spells kind of just like solve survival games. And in
Well,
those
not just
instances, I think
survival, but
Teleportation Circle just
also
removes
like
it. So
people you can meet along the way. You
sure,
know, the
the journey is
is
part of the fun for
yes.
you. Yeah.
All right. Well,
Fair enough.
that was Teleportation Circle. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for listening and watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns and Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.